The Silent Sentinel. Dr. Ilara Chen stared at the holographic display, her dark eyes reflecting the swirling patterns of stars and planets. The lab was quiet, save for the low hum of advanced computing systems and the occasional beep from various monitors. She reached out, her slender fingers manipulating the galactic map with practiced ease, zooming in on a particular sector that had been causing her sleepless nights for weeks. "There," she murmured, more to herself than to her assembled team. "That's where they are." Admiral Marcus Kane, a tall man with steel-gray hair and a commanding presence, stepped forward. His crisp naval uniform seemed out of place among the lab coats and casual wear of the scientists, but his presence here was crucial. "You're certain, Dr. Chen?" Ilara nodded, her short black hair bobbing with the movement. "The gravitational distortions are unmistakable, Admiral. We're looking at a fleet of ships, massive in scale, moving through the Kuiper Belt. They're trying to mask their approach, but our deep space sensors are picking up their wake." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had long prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, the weight of it felt almost crushing. Admiral Kane's voice cut through the tension. "How long do we have?" Ilara tapped a few commands into her console, and the display shifted, showing a trajectory path. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 3 months. 3 months, Kane repeated, his voice a mix of determination and concern. "It's not much time, but it's more than we might have had. Dr. Chen, is the Helios array ready?" Ilara hesitated, her brow furrowing. "It's close, Admiral. We've run successful tests on individual units, but we haven't had the chance to test the full array. There are still calibration issues, and the potential energy output is—" "Doctor," Kane interrupted gently, "I don't need to remind you of what's at stake here. That fleet out there, they're not coming to shake hands and exchange cultural notes. We need the Helios array operational, and we need it now." Ilara nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The Helios array was her brainchild, a defensive system so audacious that most of the scientific community had dismissed it as impossible when she first proposed it. But impossible was exactly what Earth needed in the face of an alien invasion. "We'll have it ready, Admiral," she said, her voice firm with resolve. "But you need to understand the risks. We're talking about weaponizing a star, the sun itself. If our calculations are off by even a fraction—" "I understand the risks, Doctor," Kane replied, his eyes softening slightly. "But the alternative is the subjugation or extinction of our entire species. We'll take whatever edge we can get." As if on cue, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and the holographic display flickered, showing a new alert. Ilara's fingers flew over the controls, bringing up the incoming data. "It's the long-range scout we sent out last month," she announced, her voice tight. "It's transmitting data and a message." The room held its collective breath as Ilara decrypted the transmission. When it finally played, the voice that filled the lab was unmistakably human, but filled with a terror that sent chills down everyone's spine. "This is Captain Sarah Reeves of the ESS Pathfinder. We've made contact with the alien fleet. They destroyed us without warning. Massive energy weapons, unlike anything we've ever seen. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Earth has to be ready. They're coming, and they won't stop until—" The message cut off abruptly, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. Admiral Kane was the first to speak. "How many were on that ship?" "Crew of 50, Ilara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Kane's jaw tightened. 50 brave souls. Their sacrifice won't be in vain. He turned to address the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, as of this moment, we are at war. A war for the very survival of our species. I need everyone working around the clock to get our defenses ready. Dr. Chen, you have full authority to requisition whatever resources you need for the Helios array." As the room erupted into frantic activity, Ilara felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Dr. Raj Patel, her longtime friend and colleague, looking at her with a mix of concern and determination. "We knew this day would come," Raj said softly. "Are you ready for this, Ilara?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Ready or not, Raj, it's here. We've spent our entire careers preparing for this moment. It's time to show the universe what humanity is capable of." Over the next few weeks, the secret facility beneath the Atacama Desert became a hive of activity. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, fine-tuning the Helios Array's systems. Military personnel coordinated with governments around the world, preparing for the possibility that the array might fail and Earth would face a conventional invasion. Ilara found herself at the center of it all, splitting her time between overseeing the array's completion and briefing world leaders on the impending threat. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but she refused to buckle under it. One evening, as she was poring over the latest simulation results, Admiral Kane entered her lab. He looked haggard, the stress of the situation etched into the lines of his face. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice grave, "we've intercepted communications from the alien fleet. Our linguistics team has made some progress in deciphering their language." Ilara looked up, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "What have they learned?" Kane handed her a tablet. "They call themselves the Vorax Imperium. From what we can gather, they're a species that values strength above all else. They see the conquest of lesser races as their divine right." Ilara scrolled through the report, her heart sinking. "They'd done this before," she murmured. "Many times, by the look of it." Kane nodded grimly. "Dozens of civilizations, maybe more. They strip planets of resources, enslave the populations, and move on. Earth is just the latest in a long line of conquests for them. But we won't be like the others," Ilara said, a fierce determination in her voice. "We'll be the ones who stop them." "That's the spirit, Doctor," Kane replied with a hint of a smile. "Now tell me about our progress." Ilara led the Admiral to the main display, bringing up a schematic of the Helios Array. "We've solved the calibration issues," she explained. "The array is now capable of focusing solar energy with unprecedented precision. In theory, we can direct a beam of concentrated solar plasma at any target in the solar system." "In theory?" Kane raised an eyebrow. "We can't exactly test it at full power," Ilara admitted. "The energy output would be noticeable. We'd give away our advantage before the Vorax even arrive." Kane nodded understanding. "And what about the potential side effects you mentioned earlier?" Ilara's expression grew serious. "That's still a concern. Channeling that much of the sun's energy, even for a brief moment, could have unforeseen consequences. Solar flares, electromagnetic pulses that could affect our own technology. We're in uncharted territory here, Admiral." "Do we have any choice?" Kane asked, though they both knew the answer. "No," Ilara replied softly. "We don't." As they stood there, contemplating the enormity of what they were about to attempt, an alarm sounded. One of Ilara's assistants rushed into the lab, his face pale. "Dr. Chen, Admiral," he gasped. "We've detected a small group of ships that have broken off from the main Vorax fleet. They're accelerating, heading straight for Earth." Ilara and Kane exchanged a look of alarm. This wasn't part of the plan. They weren't ready yet. "How long?" Kane demanded. The assistant swallowed hard. "At their current speed, less than 48 hours. The room seemed to spin around Ilara. 48 hours, not 3 months. Not even close to enough time. The Helios Array was operational, yes, but untested at full capacity. Using it now would be a desperate gamble. But as she looked at the fear in her assistant's eyes, at the grim determination on Kane's face, she knew they had run out of options. Humanity's moment of truth had arrived far sooner than anyone had anticipated. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind, "I think it's time to inform the world leaders. We need to activate the global alert system." Kane nodded, already reaching for his secure communicator. Agreed. And Doctor? Yes, Admiral. Prepare the Helios array for immediate use. As of this moment, we are Earth's first, last, and only line of defense against the Vorax Imperium. As Kane strode out of the lab, already coordinating with military commands around the globe, Ilara turned back to her team. They looked to her, a mix of fear and hope in their eyes. "You heard the Admiral," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "We have less than 48 hours to save our world. Let's show these aliens what happens when they underestimate humanity." With renewed purpose, the team sprang into action. As Ilara began the final preparations for humanity's most ambitious and terrifying weapon, she couldn't help but think of all the people going about their lives, blissfully unaware of the danger hurtling towards them from the depths of space. Soon, the skies would light up with a power never before wielded by human hands. Soon, Earth would either emerge victorious or fall to an implacable foe. And at the center of it all stood Ilara Chen, a scientist about to unleash the fury of a star in humanity's defense. The silent sentinel that was the Helios array was about to awaken, and the universe would never be the same. The Helios Gambit. The world changed overnight. As news of the approaching Vorax fleet spread across the globe, humanity faced its greatest challenge. Panic gripped some nations, while others rallied with unprecedented unity. In every major city, screens displayed the countdown to the aliens' arrival, a constant reminder of the impending confrontation. Dr. Ilara Chen stood before the United Nations Security Council, her holographic projection flickering slightly as she addressed the world's leaders. "The Vorax Advance Force will reach our solar system within hours," she said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We've activated the Helios array, but I must stress that this technology is untested at full capacity. It represents our best hope, but also our greatest risk." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, each leader demanding answers, assurances, or simply venting their fear. Admiral Marcus Kane, standing beside Ilara's projection, raised his hand for silence. "We understand your concerns," he said, his authoritative tone cutting through the noise. "But we must present a united front. Any sign of division will be exploited by the Vorax." "Dr. Chen, please continue." Ilara nodded gratefully. "We've prepared a series of coded messages to be broadcast on all frequencies as the Vorax enter the system. These messages are an attempt at peaceful communication, but also a warning. We hope to avoid conflict, but we must also demonstrate our resolve." As the meeting continued, debates raging over evacuation plans and resource allocation, Ilara's mind drifted to her team back at the facility. They were working around the clock, fine-tuning the Helios array, preparing for a moment that would define the fate of humanity. Thousands of kilometers away, in the depths of the Atacama Desert, Dr. Raj Patel wiped sweat from his brow as he made final adjustments to the Helios array's control systems. The facility hummed with nervous energy, scientists and technicians scurrying about like ants in a disturbed hill. "Power coupling on satellite X-217 is fluctuating," called out one of the engineers. "We need to stabilize it before the array goes live." Raj cursed under his breath. They were cutting it too close. "Reroute power from the auxiliary systems," he ordered. "We can't risk a cascade failure during operation." As his team scrambled to comply, Raj's tablet chimed with an incoming message. It was from Ilara. "How are we looking, Raj?" Her text read, "The Security Council is demanding updates every 15 minutes." Raj sighed, his fingers flying over the screen as he responded. "We're close, but it's not perfect. The array will work, but I can't guarantee for how long or at what cost." There was a long pause before Ilara's reply came through. "It has to be enough. We're out of time." As if to punctuate her words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red warning lights bathed the control room in an eerie glow. Raj's heart pounded as he pulled up the long-range sensor data. The Vorax fleet had entered the solar system. In the void of space, beyond the orbit of Neptune, a tear in the fabric of reality spat out the first of the Vorax ships. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, its hull a maze of sharp angles and ominous protrusions. In its wake came dozens more, each smaller but no less menacing. Aboard the Vorax command ship, High Commander Zox Kulker surveyed the primitive star system with disdain. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his craggy face, blinked in sequence as he processed the sensor data. Pathetic, he growled, his translator rendering his guttural language into a harsh approximation of human speech. Another world of weaklings, ripe for conquest. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vexnar, approached with a data slate. High Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the third planet. It appears they may have some form of defensive capability. Zox Kulker's upper eyes narrowed. Impossible. Our scouts reported no significant technology. These humans are barely out of their gravity well. Nevertheless, Vexnar insisted, the energy signature is unlike anything we've encountered before. Perhaps we should approach with caution. The High Commander's hand lashed out, striking Vexnar across the face. Caution. We are Vorax. We do not skulk and cower before lesser beings. Prepare the fleet for full engagement. We will crush these humans and take their world, as is our right. As the Vorax fleet began its inexorable advance towards Earth, humanity's message of peace and warning was broadcast into space. For agonizing hours, there was no response. In the UN Security Council chamber, world leaders waited with bated breath. Admiral Kane paced back and forth, his usual composure cracking under the strain. Ilara stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the Vorax fleet's approach. Finally, a response came. The alien transmission overtook every communication channel on Earth, their harsh language grating on human ears before the translation software kicked in. Insignificant creatures, the voice of High Commander Zox Kulker boomed. Your pitiful attempts at diplomacy amuse us. Know that you face the might of the Vorax Imperium, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. Surrender now, and we may be merciful. Resist, and we will scour your civilization from existence. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Admiral Kane was the first to recover. Well, he said grimly, I think that answers the question of their intentions. Dr. Chen, is the Helios array ready? Ilara's hand trembled slightly as she checked the latest update from Raj. It's as ready as it's going to be, Admiral. But we should try one last time to avoid this conflict. The consequences of using the array. I understand your concerns, Dr. Kane interrupted gently. But we've seen what happens to worlds that surrender to the Vorax. We owe it to humanity to fight, no matter the cost. With a heavy heart, Ilara nodded. She opened a secure channel to the facility in the Atacama. Raj, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, initialize the Helios array. We're going to war. In the control room of the secret facility, Raj Patel took a deep breath. He looked around at his team, saw the fear and determination in their eyes. This is it, people, he announced. Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment. Let's show these aliens what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. With trembling fingers, Raj entered the final activation sequence. Across the solar system, hundreds of satellites previously thought to be simple communication relays came to life. They began to align, forming a vast, invisible web around the sun. The Helios array was awakening, and with it, Earth's last hope for survival. As the Vorax fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, High Commander Zox Kulker prepared for what he assumed would be a swift and glorious conquest. The weapons of his massive ship powered up, ready to rain death upon the unsuspecting planet below. But in that moment, something unexpected happened. The sun, that unremarkable yellow star at the center of this backwater system, began to pulse with an unnatural light. Vexinar's voice rang out in alarm. High Commander, We're detecting a massive energy buildup. It's coming from the star itself. Zox Kulker's 4 eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Impossible, he breathed. No species could harness the power of a star. It's a trick, a desperate illusion. But as the light grew brighter, as tendrils of solar plasma began to coalesce into a focused beam, the High Commander realized his grave error. These humans, these supposedly primitive creatures, had achieved the unthinkable. Evasive maneuvers. Zox Kulker roared, but it was too late. The Helios array fired. A lance of pure stellar energy, hotter than the core of a sun and more focused than any weapon in the known galaxy, lashed out across the void of space. It struck the Lid Vorax ship with apocalyptic force, vaporizing it instantly. The beam continued, cutting through the Vorax fleet like a scythe through wheat. Ships exploded, their advanced shields proving useless against the raw power of a star unleashed. In the UN Security Council chamber, in the control room of the secret facility, and in homes and shelters across the planet, humanity watched in awe and terror as their desperate gambit unfolded. The Helios array had worked beyond their wildest expectations. But as the solar system lit up with the fury of an weaponized star, as the remnants of the once mighty Vorax fleet fled in panic, Ilara Chen and Raj Patil exchanged a look of grim understanding. They had saved humanity from the alien threat, but at what cost? The consequences of wielding such power were yet to be seen, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As the light of their improbable victory faded, Earth stood on the precipice of a new era. The silent sentinel had spoken, and the universe had been forced to listen. The Helios gambit had paid off, but the game was far from over. Countdown to confrontation. The aftermath of the Helios array's first firing left Earth in a state of shocked elation. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious, but the cost of that victory was yet to be fully understood. Dr. Ilara Chen stood before a wall of monitors in the United Nations Emergency Command Center, her eyes darting from one display to another. Each screen showed a different aspect of Earth's current situation: global weather patterns, seismic activity, radiation levels, and most ominously, the regrouping Vorax fleet. The good news, Ilara announced to the room full of world leaders and military commanders, is that the initial firing of the Helios array was more successful than we could have hoped. We've destroyed or disabled approximately 60% of the Vorax fleet. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled dignitaries, but Admiral Kane's voice cut through the optimism. And the bad news, Doctor. Ilara took a deep breath. The bad news is twofold. First, the remaining Vorax ships are regrouping. They're maintaining a distance just beyond Mars' orbit, likely out of range of another Helios strike. Second, she hesitated, her face grim. The array's firing has had some unforeseen consequences on our solar system. She tapped a command into her tablet, and the central holographic display zoomed in on the sun. Even to the untrained eye, something was clearly wrong. The star's surface roiled with unusual activity, solar flares lashing out with unprecedented frequency and intensity. We've destabilized the sun's magnetic field, Ilara explained. It's causing an increase in solar activity that could have severe implications for Earth's climate and our global infrastructure. We're already seeing disruptions in satellite communications and power grids. The room erupted into worried discussions, but Ilara raised her voice to be heard over the commotion. We're working on solutions, but I need to be clear. Another firing of the Helios array could have catastrophic consequences, not just for Earth, but potentially for the entire solar system. As the implications of her words sank in, a heavy silence fell over the room. It was Admiral Kane who finally broke it. So, we have a wounded but still dangerous enemy at our doorstep, and our most powerful weapon might destroy us if we use it again, he summarized grimly. I think it's safe to say we're in a precarious position. Ilara nodded. That's why we need to explore every possible alternative. Diplomatic channels, conventional military options, anything to avoid another use of the array. As the meeting devolved into heated debates over strategy and resource allocation, Ilara's mind drifted to her team back at the Atacama facility. They were working around the clock to mitigate the effects of the Helios firing and prepare for any possible scenario. She knew that the fate of humanity might well rest on their shoulders once again. Thousands of kilometers away in the depths of space, the remnants of the Vorax fleet seethed with a mixture of rage and fear. Aboard the new command ship, hastily promoted High Commander Vexnar faced a crisis unlike any in Vorax history. "Impossible," growled one of his sub-commanders, pounding a clawed fist on the holographic display. "No primitive species could harness the power of a star. It must be a trick, an illusion." Vexinar's 4 eyes narrowed as he surveyed the damage reports. Half their fleet gone in an instant, their most advanced shields and armor proving useless against the humans' star weapon. It defied everything the Vorax thought they knew about the universe. Illusion or not, Vexnar hissed, its effects were all too real. "We underestimated these humans, and it has cost us dearly." Another sub-commander, his carapace still scorched from his narrow escape, spoke up. "Then we should retreat. Regroup, bring reinforcements from the home systems. We can return and crush these upstarts with overwhelming force." Vexnar considered the suggestion. It was the prudent course of action, the safe choice. But he knew that to retreat now would be to admit defeat, to show weakness. In Vorax culture, such an act would be unforgivable. "No," he decided, his voice filled with grim determination. "We will not flee like cowards. The humans caught us by surprise, but they have revealed their hand. Now we adapt, we evolve, as we have always done. We will find a way to neutralize their weapon, and then we will make them pay for every drop of Vorax blood they have spilled." As Vexinar outlined his plan, a spark of the old Vorax confidence returned to his subordinates' eyes. They were the conquerors of 1,000 worlds, the apex predators of the galaxy. One setback, no matter how severe, would not deter them from their divine right to rule. Little did they know that their internal communications were being monitored by human listening posts scattered throughout the solar system. As Vexinar's plans for a renewed assault took shape, the information was relayed back to Earth, where it landed on Dr. Ilara Chen's desk with the weight of a collapsing star. In the following days, Earth became a planet transformed. The initial euphoria of victory gave way to grim determination as the reality of their situation set in. The Vorax were wounded but far from defeated, and humanity's greatest weapon was a double-edged sword that could not be wielded lightly. Cities around the world were retrofitted into fortresses. Underground bunkers, mothballed since the Cold War, were reactivated and expanded. The world's militaries pooled their resources, forming a united Earth defense force under the joint command of Admiral Kane and his international counterparts. In orbit, a hastily assembled fleet of armed satellites and repurposed civilian spacecraft formed a thin line of defense. It was a pitiful force compared to the technological might of the Vorax, but it was all that stood between Earth and annihilation if the aliens managed to neutralize the Helios array. At the Atacama facility, Dr. Raj Patel led a team of the world's brightest minds in a desperate race against time. They worked tirelessly, seeking ways to stabilize the sun's magnetic field and refine the Helios array's targeting systems. If they were forced to use the weapon again, they needed to minimize the collateral damage to the solar system. "We're making progress," Raj reported during one of his daily video conferences with Ilara. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his usual neat appearance disheveled. "We think we can reduce the solar disruption by about 30% if we have to fire again." "But Ilara," he hesitated, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "It's still not enough. Another full power shot could trigger a chain reaction in the sun's core. We're talking about potential nova-level events." Ilara's heart sank at the news. "Keep working on it, Raj. We need options, any options. The Vorax won't give us much more time." As if to underscore her words, alarms began blaring in the background of Raj's video feed. His head snapped around, eyes widening in alarm. Ilara, we're detecting movement in the Vorax fleet. They're advancing. The next hours were a blur of activity as Earth's defenses mobilized. The Vorax approached with agonizing slowness, their formation designed to present as difficult a target as possible for the Helios array. It was clear they had learned from their previous encounter and were determined not to be caught off guard again. In a last desperate attempt to avoid conflict, Earth's leaders broadcast a final message to the approaching fleet. It was a plea for peace, an offer of cooperation and cultural exchange. For agonizing hours, there was no response. Then, as the Vorax fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, a transmission cut through Earth's communications channels. High Commander Vexnar's harsh voice filled the airwaves. Humans of Earth, your weapon is impressive, but it will not save you. We are the Vorax, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. We do not retreat, we do not surrender. You have earned our respect, and so we offer you a choice. Submit to us now. Become part of our glorious empire, and we will spare your lives. Resist, and we will reduce your world to ash, even if we must sacrifice our entire fleet to do so. You have one planetary rotation to decide. As the transmission cut off, a deathly silence fell over the United Nations Emergency Command Center. The weight of the decision before them was almost unbearable. Submit to alien rule or risk the destruction of their entire world. Admiral Kane turned to Ilara, his face a mask of grim determination. Dr. Chen, he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. I think it's time we show these Vorax exactly what humanity is capable of when our backs are against the wall. Prepare the Helios array for firing. Ilara's hand trembled as she reached for her communicator. The fate of Earth, perhaps of the entire solar system, rested on the next few moments. As she gave the order to Raj and his team to begin the firing sequence, she couldn't help but wonder, had they just saved humanity or doomed it? The countdown to Earth's greatest confrontation had begun, and there was no turning back now. The solar inferno. The tension in the United Nations Emergency Command Center was palpable as the countdown to the Helios array's activation ticked away. Dr. Ilara Chen stood before the main display, her eyes fixed on the holographic representation of the solar system. The Vorax fleet, a menacing swarm of red dots, crept ever closer to Earth. T-5 minutes to array activation, announced a disembodied voice, echoing through the command center and countless other facilities around the globe. Admiral Kane approached Ilara, his face a mask of grim determination. Dr. Chen, I need your honest assessment. What are we looking at here? Ilara took a deep breath, steeling herself. Best case scenario. We cripple the Vorax fleet and buy ourselves time to negotiate from a position of strength. Worst case, she hesitated, the weight of their decision heavy on her shoulders. We could trigger a chain reaction in the sun that would make Earth uninhabitable within years, if not months. Kane nodded solemnly. A hell of a gamble. The biggest in human history, Ilara agreed. She turned to face the Admiral, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and determination. But it's our only play. The Vorax won't stop. If we submit, we're dooming humanity to slavery or extinction. At least this way, we go down fighting. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the command center. A young technician called out, his voice tight with panic. Multiple launches detected from the Vorax fleet. They're firing on our orbital defenses. The main display shifted, showing Earth's meager defensive line of satellites and hastily armed spacecraft. They were being systematically destroyed by the advanced Vorax weapons, burning up in brief, bright flares against the backdrop of space. They're not waiting for our answer, Kane growled. He turned to the communications officer. Send the signal. All channels, all languages. Tell the world. Tell them we're about to light up the sky. As the message went out, Ilara opened a secure channel to the Atacama facility. Raj's face appeared on her personal screen, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and grim resolve. Raj, Ilara said softly, it's time. He nodded, understanding the weight of those simple words. We're ready, Elara. The array is primed and targeting solutions are locked. We've done everything we can to minimize the solar disruption. But he trailed off, the unspoken dangers hanging between them. I know, Elara replied. Whatever happens, Raj, I want you to know. T-1 minute to array activation. The automated voice interrupted, cutting off Ilara's words. In space, aboard the Vorax command ship, High Commander Vexnar watched with savage satisfaction as his fleet tore through Earth's paltry defenses. His 4 eyes gleamed with anticipation of the coming conquest. Status report, he barked. A subordinate responded immediately. High Commander, we've destroyed 70% of the humans' orbital defenses. Our first wave of landing craft will enter the atmosphere in approximately 10 Earth minutes. Vexinar's mandibles clicked in approval. Excellent. Prepare the... He was cut off by a sudden alarm. One of his sensor operators called out in panic. Energy spike detected. It's coming from the star. Vexinar's blood ran cold as he remembered the devastation of their first encounter with the humans' star weapon. Evasive maneuvers, he roared. All ships, scatter formation. Raise shields to maximum. But it was too late. On Earth, in the Atacama facility, Raj Patel's hand hovered over the final activation switch. He glanced at the screen showing Ilara's face, saw her give a slight nod. With a silent prayer to whatever might be listening, he pressed the button. The Helios array came to life. Across the solar system, hundreds of satellites aligned, focusing the awesome power of the sun into a coherent beam of destruction. The star at the heart of Earth's system flared with unnatural brightness, tendrils of plasma arcing out in defiance of physics. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself held its breath. Then a lance of pure stellar energy, hotter than the core of a sun and more focused than any weapon in the known galaxy, lashed out across the void of space. It struck the Vorax fleet with apocalyptic force. The alien ships, for all their advanced technology, might as well have been made of tissue paper. The beam cut through their formation like a scythe through wheat, vaporizing ships instantly and leaving others as molten, twisted hulks. High Commander Vexnar had only a moment to witness the annihilation of his fleet before the command ship itself was engulfed in the solar inferno. His last thought was one of grudging respect for the humans he had so gravely underestimated. On Earth, in bunkers and shelters around the world, humanity watched in awe and terror as the sky lit up with the fury of their weaponized star. The Helios array's beam was visible even in broad daylight, a pillar of fire stretching from the sun to the heavens. In the command center, Elara and Kane stood transfixed by the display, watching as the red dots representing the Vorax fleet winked out one by one. It was a victory beyond their wildest hopes. The alien armada reduced to scattered debris in a matter of minutes. But their elation was short-lived. As the Helios array powered down, alarms began blaring across every monitoring station. The main display shifted to show the sun, and Ilara's heart sank at what she saw. The star's surface roiled with unprecedented activity, solar flares lashing out with terrible intensity. Report, Kane barked. A scientist, her face pale with shock, responded. The array's firing has further destabilized the sun's magnetic field. We're seeing massive coronal mass ejections, radiation levels off the charts. Sir, if this continues... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood the implications. They had saved Earth from the Vorax, only to potentially doom it by their own hand. Ilara's mind raced, calculating possibilities, searching for solutions. She turned to Kane, her voice urgent. Admiral, we need to shut down the array completely. Divert all power to our planetary shields. It's our only chance to weather the solar storm that's coming. Kane nodded grimly, already barking orders to put Ilara's plan into action. As the command center erupted into frantic activity, Elara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. They had won the battle against the Vorax, but at what cost? The war for humanity's survival was far from over. In the days that followed, Earth faced challenges unlike any in its history. The solar storm triggered by the Helios-erased firing battered the planet with intense radiation and electromagnetic pulses. Power grids failed, communications were disrupted, and the very climate began to shift in unpredictable ways. Yet even as they struggled against the consequences of their desperate gambit, humanity found new strength in unity. The threat of the Vorax had erased old enmities and borders. Now, faced with a crisis of their own making, the people of Earth came together as never before. Scientists worked tirelessly to stabilize the sun and repair the damage done by the Helios array. Engineers raced to adapt Earth's infrastructure to the new reality of an angry, volatile star. And through it all, the memory of their victory against an alien threat gave humanity hope and determination. They had faced the universe's greatest predators and emerged victorious. Now they would face the fury of their own star and prove once again that humanity's greatest strength lay not in weapons of unimaginable power, but in their boundless capacity for adaptation and perseverance. As Ilara Chen looked out over a world forever changed by the events of the past days, she knew that the real work was just beginning. The silent sentinel of the Helios array had spoken, and now it fell to humanity to deal with the echoes of its voice. The solar inferno had reshaped their world, but from its ashes, a new era of human history would rise. An era forged in the fires of stars and tempered by the indomitable will of a species that refused to go quietly into the night. A new dawn. 5 years had passed since the day humanity had harnessed the power of a star to defend itself against the Vorax invasion. The scars of that desperate gambit were still visible, both on Earth and in the heavens above. Dr. Ilara Chen stood at the observation deck of the newly constructed Luna base, her eyes fixed on the blue marble of Earth hanging in the void. From up here, the planet looked almost peaceful, its true turmoil hidden beneath swirling clouds and glittering city lights. Quite a view, isn't it? The gruff voice of Admiral Marcus Kane broke through her reverie. The years had added more gray to his hair, more lines to his face, but his eyes still held the same determination she remembered from that fateful day. Ilara nodded, a small smile touching her lips. It never gets old, especially now that the atmospheric disturbances are finally settling down. Kane joined her at the window, his hands clasped behind his back. The terraforming efforts on Mars are ahead of schedule, he reported. It seems our little solar tantrum had some unexpected benefits for our neighbor. Little solar tantrum, Ilara repeated with a wry chuckle. That's one way to put it. The aftermath of the Helios array's firing had been catastrophic in ways they couldn't have fully anticipated. The sun's destabilized magnetic field had bathed the solar system in intense radiation, altering climates and making much of Earth's surface temporarily uninhabitable. Humanity had been forced to retreat underground or to hastily constructed space habitats while they worked to mitigate the damage. But from that crisis had come opportunity. The need to escape the radiation had accelerated space exploration and colonization efforts by decades. The Moon, Mars, and even the moons of Jupiter and Saturn now hosted thriving human outposts. Necessity had bred innovation at an unprecedented rate. Have you seen the latest reports from the Galactic Rim? Kane asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. Ilara nodded, her expression turning serious. 3 more alien species have requested diplomatic relations in the past month alone. It seems our reputation precedes us. The destruction of the Vorax fleet had sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Species that had long lived under the shadow of Vorax oppression suddenly found themselves free. And at the center of it all was humanity, the upstart civilization that had done the impossible. We're still debating how to respond, Kane said. Some are advocating for isolation, to focus on rebuilding. Others want to seize the opportunity, to claim our place among the stars. Ilara turned to face him fully. And what do you think, Admiral? Kane was quiet for a long moment, considering. I think we don't have the luxury of isolation anymore. Like it or not, we've announced our presence to the galaxy in a big way. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next." As if on cue, a young lieutenant approached them, tablet in hand. "Excuse me, Admiral, Doctor. We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Conclave. They're inviting Earth to send representatives." Ilara and Kane exchanged a look of surprise. The Galactic Conclave was the closest thing to a united government that existed among the known spacefaring species. An invitation to join was unprecedented for such a young civilization. "Well," Kane said with a hint of a smile, "I guess that answers that question." As the lieutenant hurried off to relay the news, Ilara felt a weight settle on her shoulders. "Marcus," she said softly, using the Admiral's first name for one of the few times in their long association, "do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? With the Helios array, I mean." Kane's expression grew somber. "Every day," he admitted, "we saved humanity, but at a terrible cost. The environmental damage, the lives lost in the aftermath." He trailed off, his gaze distant. "But then I remember what the alternative was. Slavery. Extinction. At least this way, we had a chance." Ilara nodded, understanding all too well. The ethical implications of their actions had been a source of constant debate and soul-searching over the past 5 years. They had wielded a power that no species should possess, and the consequences had been far-reaching. "We can't change the past," she said finally, "but we can shape the future. This invitation from the Conclave, it's a chance to ensure that something like this never happens again. To build a galaxy where no species has to face the choice we did." Kane straightened, a new resolve in his bearing. "You're right, of course, and I can't think of anyone better suited to represent humanity in this new arena." He gave her a significant look. Ilara's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. "Me? Surely there are more qualified than the woman who saved humanity from alien invasion and then led the efforts to save us from our own sun." Kane interrupted with a raised eyebrow. "I don't think so. You understand the science, the ethics, and the stakes better than anyone." Before Ilara could formulate a response, alarms began to blare throughout the base. Red warning lights flashed, and the observation deck was suddenly a flurry of activity. "Report," Kane barked, slipping easily back into command mode. A frantic technician approached. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy signature at the edge of the solar system. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." Ilara and Kane rushed to the main display, where a holographic representation of the solar system showed a swirling vortex of energy forming just beyond Pluto's orbit. As they watched, a massive object emerged from the vortex. "Is it Vorax?" someone asked, fear evident in their voice. But Ilara shook her head, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial alarm. "No, this is something else entirely. The energy readings, the method of travel, it's far beyond even what the Vorax had." As if in response to her words, a transmission cut through all communication channels. The voice that filled the air was unlike anything human ears had ever heard, a symphony of tones and harmonics that somehow coalesced into understandable speech. "People of Earth," the voice said, its tone neither threatening nor particularly friendly, "we are the guardians of the cosmic accord. Your recent actions have drawn our attention. The power you have wielded is not meant for young races. We come to judge whether you are ready for the responsibility that comes with such knowledge." The message ended, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Ilara and Kane exchanged a look, understanding passing between them without words. This was humanity's next great challenge, perhaps even greater than the Vorax invasion. "Well, Dr. Chen," Kane said, a hint of his old wry humor creeping into his voice, "it looks like your diplomatic skills are going to be put to the test sooner than we thought." Ilara nodded, her mind already racing with the implications of this new development. They had faced the fires of a weaponized star and emerged stronger. Now they would face the judgment of beings beyond their comprehension. But as she looked around at the faces of her fellow humans, saw the determination and ingenuity that had brought them this far, She felt a surge of hope. Whatever challenges these guardians might pose, humanity would face them together. The silent sentinel of the Helios array had brought them to this moment, for better or worse. Now it was up to them to prove that they were worthy of the power they had wielded, worthy of a place among the stars. As the massive ship of the Guardians drew closer, Ilara squared her shoulders and stepped forward. A new dawn was breaking for humanity, and she was ready to meet it head-on. The universe had thrown its best shot at humanity, and they had not only survived but thrived. Whatever came next, Ilara knew one thing for certain. The human spirit, tempered by the fires of stars and strengthened by adversity, would rise to meet it. The next chapter in humanity's cosmic story was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.